Hi, my name is Shadows Mist, and this is the first part in my How to Color Comics tutorial series in Adobe Photoshop. As you can see, I am in Adobe Photoshop, and we're going to start with cleaning up the artwork that is going to be colored. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right into it, and I'm going to clean up some artwork that I was given to color for a webcomic called Starship Moonhawk. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my file. So I'm just going to open it, go and find it. And in this case it is number 98. We're going to open it. And here is the artwork I have been given. In this case, it's been given to me in what is a high-res bump file, which is a bitmap file. Generally, if you scan artwork and you scan it as a bump file, you are scanning it as complete black and white, so there's no shades of gray in here, which is good for a colorist, because there's not going to be any little specks of dust or anything like that already on the artwork. So that's really handy. It's already pretty clean when I get it. So the first thing I've got to do in order to actually be able to clean this up, we want to get rid of all of the white in here. Like, this is a common problem. You scan it in and you have white. So how do you get rid of it? Well, this is a pretty cool trick. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by converting this to something that we can work with. Right now is a bump file, and it is, if you look in the image mode, it is a bitmap file. We can't work with it as a bitmap file. It won't let us do anything at all. So we have to first convert it to grayscale, because that's our only option. So click the grayscale. Size ratio 1 is fine. Let it convert. So now we actually can do a few things with it. But we're going to have to convert it to RGB in order to actually color it. So we're just going to continue and get to RGB before we start complicating things with having layers and whatnot. And just make sure we're in the correct color space. RGB is the most versatile color space that you can have in Photoshop. So generally speaking, it's good if you are working in it to start with. Now the other thing that we're going to do before we start is we're going to look at the image size. In this case, my image is almost 8.5 by 11 inches. 600 dpi. 600 dpi is pretty high. In fact, most printed published materials don't go any higher than 300. So what we're going to do is we're going to reduce this to 300 to make it workable. Why would we do this? Because most computers don't have oodles and oodles of RAM to burn, and it would take a lot longer in order to actually color it, because the computer has to think more and everything else. When you start getting lots of layers, you start using lots of memory, it slows down, it gets annoying. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop the resolution to 300 dpi, which is standard, so if they want to print it, they could. And then later on, when you're going to display it for the web, you're going to reduce it even further, which is going to hide a lot of your mistakes, which you're going to be grateful for later. But first off, let's just reduce it to the 300, say OK. Let it do its thing. You notice it shrunk. It's because it just tossed out a bunch of pixels, but it's still, we're only looking at it at 25%, so it's still pretty darn big. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get rid of all of the white, and this is what I call the channels trick. Can't see my air quotes, but I'm doing them. The first thing we have to do is get rid of the background layer. If we look in the layers palette, this is always the first layer you have when you're working on any kind of picture. So you want to double click on this and convert it to what I call layer 0. Well, it calls itself layer 0. Once it's at layer 0, you'll notice the little lock that was there disappeared. Now we can actually do things with it. What we're going to do is do a nice trick to get rid of all this at once, and we go into the channels to do this. You've probably, if you're not a heavy user of Photoshop, you've probably never even been in this palette before, but trust me, it's very, very handy for this particular application. So while all these are highlighted in blue, there you notice there's a little button here, a little round button with dots. It's the Load Channels as a Selection button. Now if you click that, you'll notice that the whole thing is going to turn into the marching ants, which is the selection thing here. Now what it's done is it's selected all the white pixels on the page. All of them. So if we go back to layers and then we hit the backspace, bam, instantly deletes every single pixel of white on the page. If we deselect it, you notice it's gotten kind of fuzzy in a few places. The lines aren't quite as sharp as they were. In order to sharpen all this up, what we're going to do is we're going to apply a fill. So we're going to say fill, black. Make sure the preserve transparency is ticked on. What that does is where you see all this checkering, it won't fill anything that's got the checkers on it with black. It'll only fill the areas that already have paint or black lines already in them. So if you say OK, you'll notice that it just got a little bit nice and and crisper there. So now we've got a really awesome, clean piece of artwork to work with. So now we're going to move on to part 2 of applying the base colors.